Alina moved quietly through the hallways of the Grand Mariner Hotel, her footsteps soft on the velvet carpet as the night shift finally began to settle. At this hour, the lobby dimmed to warm amber tones. The chandeliers softened, and only the rustle of newspapers or the clink of glasses from the late-night bar disturbed the silence. Alina preferred these hours. They were peaceful, predictable, almost soothing after the chaotic afternoons when tourists flooded every corner. She tucked a strand of her curly hair behind her ear, adjusted her cleaning cart, and continued down the West Wing. She didn't look like someone the world had chosen to pay attention to. At least that's what people assumed. Just a black hotel made in a crisp black apron and white shirt someone guests rarely made eye contact with. But Alina held a secret just under her calm, quiet surface. She carried an entire world inside her, invisible to the people who passed her every day. A world she worked hard to keep tucked away. It wasn't because she was ashamed of it, but because revealing herself would always lead to questions she didn't want to answer. Expectations she didn't want to meet, and assumptions she didn't care to correct. So she stayed low, unnoticed, comfortable in the shadows. Until that night, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Not the hotel-shooed walkie, but her own personal phone. She didn't usually answer calls while working, especially not when she was on a quiet hallway alone, but the number flashing across the screen made her freeze. She whispered a tiny prayer under her breath, picked it up, and pressed the phone to her ear. "Hallo ho got het." Heeft high jet overleafed. Her voice dropped automatically, the Dutch syllables flowing from her mouth with practiced ease, soft but urgent. She listened intensely to the voice on the other end, switching between short questions and low murmurs of concern. Anyone walking past would. He immediately noticed the contrast between her hotel maid uniform and her elegantly structured Dutch speech. The kind you only heard from someone who wasn't just casually fluent, but formally educated. But Alina didn't see the man stepping out of Suite 57. She didn't see him pause. She didn't see him turn his head sharply, confusion flaring in his eyes. She didn't see the billionaire Alexander hail the man who practically owned half the city. The man whose face appeared in magazines, newspapers, conferences, and luxury events. Stand there frozen as her words drifted through the hall. He wasn't a man that missed details. He'd built an empire by noticing the things people whispered, the things people tried to hide, and the things people assumed he was too important to pay attention to. But this he hadn't expected. A hotel maid speaking fluent Dutch, fluently enough to carry an emotional, layered conversation, fluently enough to sound like someone who belonged in a corporate boardroom or international embassy. Billionaires didn't surprise easily, but this hooked something in him instantly. When Alina hung up, she took a deep breath, collecting herself before turning in. Suddenly, her entire body went rigid. Alexander Hale stood barely 3 feet away, and he was staring straight at her. Before the story continues, dear viewers, I want to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments right now. And if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it. It helps us bring you more dramatic stories like this one. Alina's fingers tightened around the phone instinctively, but her face remained calm even though her heart hammered so hard she feared he might hear it. She recognized him immediately. Everyone did. The chiseled jawline, the slightly tired eyes that still held sharpness, the perfectly pressed suit even at this hour. Alexander Hale was the kind of man you noticed whether he wanted you to or not. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said softly, his voice deep but controlled. "I stepped outside to make a call, and then I overheard you." That was Dutch, wasn't it? Alina felt the familiar rush of tension coil in her chest. People who discovered her fluency never reacted casually. They always wanted to know how, why, who taught her. But this wasn't just anyone. This was a billionaire whose curiosity could bulldoze through walls she'd spent years building. "Yes, sir," she replied simply, pushing her phone into her pocket and forcing a professional smile. "Is there anything you need?" "I'm just finishing the rooms on this floor." But Alexander didn't answer immediately. He studied her instead, eyes narrowing in a way that wasn't hostile but intensely analytical. It made her uneasy. "You speak beautifully," he finally said. Not like someone who learned it casually, More like someone who lived there. Alina swallowed hard. My mother worked in the Netherlands for some time, she said, offering the simplest version of the truth. I learned it when I was younger. That doesn't explain grammar that precise, he countered gently. Or that accent. His voice wasn't accusatory. It was fascinated. And fascination from a powerful man was dangerous. Alina reached for the handle of her cleaning cart. If you'll excuse me, sir, I should continue working. But Alexander stepped aside without moving away fully, and for a moment, their proximity made the air feel heavy. May I ask you something? He said quietly. And you can absolutely refuse to answer. Alina hesitated, then nodded. Why are you working here? The question sliced through her. Right to the point. No attempt to soften it. No assumptions left unspoken. She straightened her spine. Because I need the job. That's not what I asked. His voice softened, but didn't lose its weight. You're clearly educated. Your manner, your speech, your composure, they don't match this job. So why hide here? What are you running from? Alina felt something cold flutter in her chest, but she masked it with a polite smile. Sir, with respect, I think your room needs fresh towels. She attempted to wheel her cart past him, but he stepped slightly out of the way without letting her disappear completely. There was something else in his eyes now. Arrogance, not superiority. Curiosity? Yes. But also recognition. Like he was seeing someone he used to be. Alexander Hale didn't hide it well. He was intrigued, deeply as she restocked his towels and replaced the toiletries. She could feel his gaze on her not in a predatory way, but in a way that made her feel seen in a way she'd spent years avoiding. What's your name? He asked. Alina, she replied, kneeling to place the extra toilet roll under the sink. Alina what? Just Alina, she said quickly. Too quickly. He caught that. He didn't push further yet. When she finished and started moving toward the door, he spoke again. Alina, would you mind doing something for me? She froze, slowly turned. It's not part of your cleaning duties, he assured her. But tits, important. She frowned lightly. What is it? Alexander stepped closer, holding out a business card. Could you meet me tomorrow? Not here? Not while you're working. Just meet me. I have a proposal. One that could change both of our lives. Alina didn't take the card. Sir, I'm not looking for anything inappropriate. His eyes widened in genuine alarm. No, God, no. It's nothing like that. This isn't personal. It's professional. Or rather intellectual. Intellectual? Yes, because I think you're not who you pretend to be, and I think you're wasting something extraordinary. The hallway hummed with silence. Alina didn't know what scared her more, his proposal, or the fact that he might be right, and then, before she could answer, before she could even breathe, something happened that neither of them expected. A scream echoed from the far end of the hallway. A woman's voice. High, panicked, terrified. Alexander spun toward the sound instantly. Alina jolted. What was that? She whispered. But the scream wasn't alone. It was followed by a second sound, a crashing noise. Then footsteps, fast, running, and someone shouting, He's not breathing. Call someone. Alina felt adrenaline shoot through her body. Alexander, already halfway down the hall, turned back and yelled, Alina, come with me. Without thinking, she abandoned her cart and ran after him. Because something had cracked open in the walls of the Grand Mariner Hotel. Something dark. Something urgent. Something that would drag Alina's hidden past and Alexander's buried. Truths into a collision neither of them saw coming, and this was only the beginning. Alina followed Alexander down the hallway, her heart pounding not from exertion, but from the sudden shift of the night. The Grand Mariner Hotel was usually calm at this hour sleep, quiet, predictable. But now, the controlled silence was replaced by panic, voices rising, footsteps echoing like thunder against marble floors. Alina's shoes slapped lightly against the carpet as she hurried after Alexander, who moved with surprising speed for a man who carried himself with perpetual calm. When they turned the corner, the scene hit her instantly. A man lay collapsed near the elevator, his limbs twisted unnaturally, his face deathly pale. A woman stood above him, shaking so hard she could barely speak. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He said he felt dizzy then. Her voice cracked, unable to finish. Alina knelt beside the man without thinking, instincts taking over. The part of her past she tried so hard to bury, rushing to the surface like breath after drowning. She placed 2 fingers on his neck. His pulse was faint, but there. For now, Alexander crouched next to her. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice steady, clipped, already shifting into decisive mode. Alina didn't answer immediately because saying what she really needed would reveal more than she wanted anyone, especially a billionaire, to know. But there was no time to suppress anything. Not when a life hung in the balance. "He needs air," she said calmly. "Space. Move her back." Alexander gently guided the panicked woman away as Alina tilted the man's head back, listening for breath. Weak, shallow, labored. She pressed her ear to his chest. "He has an arrhythmia," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "His rhythm's irregular. He may have collapsed because she cut herself off too late, realizing the weight of what she'd just exposed. Only someone with medical training recognized arrhythmias instantly. Only someone who'd once studied medicine at a level far beyond. Basic first aid could diagnose it that quickly." Alexander's eyes snapped toward her, sharpened with fresh curiosity. But before he could speak, the elevator dinged, and 2 hotel security officers rushed out. One immediately reached for his radio, calling emergency responders. The other crouched beside Alina, clearly surprised to see a maid kneeling over the guest with such authority. "Ma'am, please step back. If you move him now, you could trigger cardiac arrest," she said evenly, not raising her voice but making it clear she knew what she was talking about. The guard froze. Alexander looked between her and the man on the floor, realization slowly slipping across his expression. Alina maintained steady pressure on the collapsed guest's chest as she monitored the breath patterns. "He's stabilizing," she said softly, though the rise and fall of his chest was still shallow. "But he needs medical equipment. They need to get here soon." When paramedics finally arrived, noisy and efficient, they took over immediately. One of them, a tall, experienced-looking man with graying hair, glanced at Alina with a hint of surprise. "Who checked him?" he asked. "I did," Alina said quietly. The paramedic gave a small nod. "You kept him stable. Good work." He didn't question why a hotel maid knew what she knew. But Alexander did. When the paramedics loaded the collapsed man onto a stretcher, the woman, his wife, clung to him, crying quietly as she followed the gurney toward the elevator. The last echoes of chaos faded slowly down the hall. And then there was silence. Alexander turned to Alina, his voice low but firm. "Who are you?" She stood up, brushing off her apron, her face a perfect mask of composure, despite the storm inside her. "Just someone who helped." But Alexander shook his head. "No, that's not enough. You diagnosed an arrhythmia in seconds. You knew exactly how to position him, how to keep him stable, when to move, when not to. That's not instinct. That's training." Alina's pulse quickened. "Sir, I really need to return to my duties." She started walking away, but he followed her. "Alina," he said, less demanding now and more troubled. "You talk like someone who used to be a doctor." She stopped mid-stride. Not completely, but enough for him to catch the hesitation. He saw it. She knew he saw it. "Did something happen?" he asked quietly. "Something that made you leave everything you were meant for?" Alina didn't look at him. "Sir, please." "You don't have to tell me details," he said, more gently now. "But don't lie to me. Not after what I just saw." She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his, exhausted, guarded, and fierce all at once. "Why does it matter to you?" "Because," he said, exhaling, "I know what it looks like when someone is running from their own brilliance." That sentence froze her, because he wasn't wrong, and the truth in his tone made it harder to dismiss him. Alexander looked around the hallway, then back at her. "Meet me tomorrow," he repeated. "Just talk to me. If you don't want the opportunity, walk away after 5 minutes, and I won't bother you again." But I think you're trapped in a life you don't belong in, and I think I can help you." Alina stared at him. Torn between fear and the magnetic pull of a door she vowed never to open again. But then before she could decide, the hotel manager, Mr. Lawson, appeared from the elevators, his expression tight and unreadable. Alina stiffened instantly. The manager's gaze flicked to Alexander, then to Alina. "Sir Lawson," said politely to the billionaire, "I heard there was an incident. We're grateful for your patience." Alexander nodded once. "Your staff handled it well, especially her." Lawson's eyes darkened with something that wasn't pride. "Alina," he said sharply, "a word. Now." Alexander opened his mouth to argue, but Alina stepped back. "It's fine," she said quietly. "Thank you, sir." She didn't let her expression betray even a hint of anxiety as she followed Lawson. Inside the service corridor, Lawson's mask cracked the moment the door closed behind them. "What do you think you were doing?" he hissed. Alina blinked. "Helping a guest who collapsed." "You overstepped," he snapped. "You gave medical instructions?" "You acted like you were in charge." "That is not your position." Alina kept her voice steady. "He could have died if I didn't intervene. And if he had—" Lawson shot back. "Who do you think this hotel would blame? A billionaire or you?" His words landed like a slap. Alina clenched her jaw, swallowing her anger. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You drew attention," he said, stepping closer, his voice cold. "And you know, we've discussed this. You're supposed to stay in your lane." A chill slid down her spine. This wasn't about the collapsed guest. This was about her past, her qualifications, her secrets. Lawson had been watching her far too closely for months. Now Alexander's interest clearly unsettled him. "I expect you to keep your head down," Lawson said, lowering his voice even more. "No more showing off. No more stepping outside your job description. Do you understand?" Alina held his gaze. She didn't nod. She didn't agree. She simply stared with the quiet resilience of someone who had endured far worse. That only seemed to frustrate him. "If you make trouble for this hotel," he warned, "I will remove you, permanently." She stiffened. "Are you threatening me?" Lawson leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. "I'm reminding you that you are replaceable." When she walked out of the corridor, her hands were trembling slightly. Alexander stood a few feet away, watching her with concern. "Everything okay?" he asked. Alina forced a professional smile. "Of course, sir. Enjoy your evening." She walked away quickly before he could read the truth on her face. But she felt his gaze burning into her back the entire time. She didn't see the way his jaw tightened, or the way his eyes followed Lawson with suspicion, or the quiet promise forming in his mind. Alexander Hale wasn't just curious anymore. Something inside him had shifted. Protectiveness, maybe. Or something deeper. Something he didn't yet understand. Later, when Alina finally finished her shift, she stepped out into the cold night air, hugging her jacket close. Her mind spun in 1,000 directions. Lawson the collapsed man, her past clawing at her again. She tried to steady her breathing. But then she noticed something across the street. A black SUV with tinted windows idling with its engine running. Not unusual in a wealthy district. But the way it was positioned, the way its headlights flickered, as if adjusting their angle the way she felt watched. Something wasn't right. She quickened her pace. The SUV didn't move. But she did. Fast, her secrets were unraveling. And someone else, someone other than Alexander, had just taken notice. This was only the start of the danger she thought she'd escaped forever. Alina barely slept that night. She lay awake in her small studio apartment, staring at the ceiling as shadows crawled across it. Her mind replayed the entire evening, Alexander's intense gaze, Lawson's threats, the man collapsing, the paramedics, praising her instincts, and then that black SUV lingering in the darkness like a predator waiting for a mistake. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, just another wealthy guest car, a coincidence. But her gut whispered something else, something far older than her life at the hotel, something tied to the reason she left medical school, the reason she hid all she once was. Secrets never stayed buried forever, not when powerful people sensed usefulness or danger. By morning, the exhaustion clung to her like damp air, but she forced herself up and into her uniform. The Grand Mariner looked peaceful from the outside warm, lights glowing across its polished entrance. Suited doormen greeting guests with practiced smiles, but Amina felt tension under its marble skin. She felt watched. Inside, the lobby bustled with wealthy travelers, business elites, and families beginning their day. She slipped past them quietly and headed toward the housekeeping office. But just before she reached it, she heard her name. Alina, she turned. Alexander Hale stood near the lobby's grand staircase, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, hands in his pockets. He looked like he belonged in a magazine, not in a hotel hallway. His eyes softened when they met hers. "You didn't come," she frowned. "Sir, I told you didn't sleep. It wasn't a question." She stiffened. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not here to talk. I have work. I gave you an opportunity." His tone wasn't harsh, but it was firm, layered with something she recognized, someone used to being obeyed, not ignored. "I'm not a project," she said quietly. "I'm not someone you can pull out of obscurity because you're curious." "Curious?" he echoed.
Oh.
"You saved a man's life last night because you knew exactly what you were doing. It's not curiosity. That's potential. That's purpose." She swallowed hard. "Oh, my past is my business. Your past is why you're wasted here." His words hit deeper than she expected. Lena looked around, realizing people were starting to glance over. She lowered her voice. "Please don't make a scene." Alexander nodded, stepped closer, and spoke more softly. "I'm meeting someone important today. A board partner. Join me." "Absolutely not," she said instantly. "Alina, sir," she cut in, her voice steady. "I want to work in peace. I don't need saving." She walked away before he could stop her, but she felt his frustration behind her like heat. Still, she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. Hours passed. She cleaned suites, changed linens, scrubbed bathrooms, restocked minibars, and did all the invisible labor that kept the luxury glowing from the outside while wearing down the people backstage. The day dragged, but a single thought followed her like a shadow. Someone had been watching her last night. And Lawson's threat wasn't empty. Someone wanted her gone not for incompetence, but because she knew too much. About medicine, about people, about things they didn't want noticed. Late afternoon settled into evening by the time she finished her floor. She pushed her supply cart into the service elevator, letting her shoulders sag. The doors were starting to close when a hand suddenly stopped them. Her breath hitched. But it wasn't Lawson. It wasn't security. It was Alexander. He stepped in. The elevator doors sealed behind him. The small metal box shrank around them, tension filling the air. "You're avoiding me," he said. "Sir, please don't stop calling me sir. It's Alexander." "I'm working. You need to listen." "I don't." "You do," he insisted, stepping closer. "Because something is happening in this hotel, and whether you want to admit it or not, you're in danger." Her stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" Alexander's jaw flexed. "This morning I overheard Lawson making a call. He mentioned a guest complaint that never happened. Said you were stepping out of line. And he said—" Alexander hesitated. "He said he had a reason to terminate you soon. A justification." Alina felt her pulse drop cold. "He wouldn't." "He would," Alexander said. "And he will." She stared at the elevator floor. Should have known. "Alina," he said softly. "Let me help." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I don't need anyone fighting my battles. I just need to keep my job." "Then let me protect it." "That's not your place," she snapped, louder than she meant. The elevator echoed with the sharpness of her voice. She closed her eyes, inhaling. "I'm sorry. I can't have you interfere." Alexander didn't move back. "Tell me why. Tell me what you're running from." Silence stretched between them. Thick, heavy, painful. The elevator reached the 6th floor and stopped. But neither of them moved. Alina finally exhaled. Slow, controlled, defeated. "I wasn't just studying medicine," she whispered. "I was top of my class. Harvard Medical. Full scholarship." Alexander's eyes widened. She continued, I shouldn't have been there, they said. Not someone like me. But I worked. I studied. I earned every inch. Her voice trembled faintly. And then I made a mistake. One mistake. One that cost a life. One I've paid for every day since. Alexander's breath hitched. Amina, I dropped out. I left everything behind. I took the first job I could find. Something small. Something invisible. Something where I could never hurt anyone again. Her hands shook where they gripped the supply cart handle. So when you say I have potential, when you tell me to go back to that world, her eyes lifted to his, you have no idea what you're asking. Alexander stepped closer until his voice was barely above a whisper. Everyone has a past. Everyone has a moment they regret. But your gift, your intelligence, your instinct, those things don't disappear because of one tragedy. It wasn't just tragedy, she said. It was failure. Then learn from it, he countered. Don't bury it. Before she could respond, before she could decide whether to push him away or break completely, the elevator jerked violently. The lights flickered. The walls rattled. Amina grabbed the railing for balance. Alexander steadied her instantly, gripping her arm. Power surge? She whispered. No, he said, his voice darkening. That wasn't an accident. The elevator jolted again. Then, with a sickening lurch, it stopped between floors. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Amina's breath caught. Okay, Alexander said calmly. Don't panic. I'm not, she said, though her chest tightened. Stay close, he said. She felt his hand slip into hers in the dark. Warm, grounding. I'm here. A moment later, the emergency lights flickered on, bathing the small chamber in dim red glow. Amina quickly scanned the control panel. All buttons were dead. Emergency call button. Dead, she frowned. Backup power failure? Impossible. Alexander's expression hardened. It was deliberate. Someone shut the system down. No, he corrected. Someone shut it down for us. A chill slid down her spine. Because you're not supposed to talk to me, he said quietly. And because someone wants you out of this hotel before I figure out why, before Amina could answer. There was a metallic sound above them, the faint scrape of something sliding against the elevator roof. Amina stiffened. Alexander's grip tightened. Someone's up there, she whispered. Checking the situation, Alexander's jaw clenched. No, there's no rescue team yet. That's not maintenance. The scraping stopped. Silence swallowed the elevator whole. Then the roof panel trembled. Someone was trying to open it. Amina's breath quickened. We need to get out of here. Alexander stepped to the side panel. Can you fit? She stared at the maintenance hatch on the side wall. Maybe. Do you trust me? He asked, not as a billionaire. Not as someone offering opportunities. Just as a human being. She nodded. Alexander pried the hatch open and helped her through the narrow passage, his hands steady at her waist. When she slipped through, he followed immediately. They crawled through the cramped service shaft, metal groaning beneath their palms. Then they heard it behind them, the elevator door creaking open. Someone had overpowered the system. Alexander whispered, "Move." They climbed up another ladder, the darkness pressing around them like breath. Finally, they reached the next floor's maintenance access. Alexander pushed the panel open, and they toppled onto the carpeted hallway, gasping. Amina scrambled to her feet. We need to call security, no, Alexander said. Not Lawson. Not anyone on his staff. His eyes burned with something fierce. Someone tried to trap us. Trap. Or silence, she whispered. Alexander stood tall, breath steadying. Whoever's after you isn't just trying to fire you. They're trying to erase you. Amina stared at him, heart pounding. Why me? Because of what you know. Or what you saw. Or what you diagnosed. He stepped closer. Or because you were never supposed to reveal who you used to be. Her chest tightened. Alexander, you're not safe here anymore, he said. Pack your things. Come with me. I can't, she said, voice trembling. You don't have a choice, he replied gently. Someone is hunting you, and I'm not letting them. Tears welled in her eyes, born not of fear, but of the sudden foreign feeling of someone standing between her and danger. Someone who didn't see a failure, who didn't see a maid, who saw her at that moment. Footsteps thundered toward them. Not urgent, not panicked, controlled, intentional. Amina grabbed Alexander's arm. They're coming. Pulled her into a staff-only hallway, leading her quietly until they slipped into a storage room. They stood close in the dim light, listening as the footsteps stopped right outside the door. Alexander reached for her hand again. I'm going to keep you safe, he whispered. Whoever is trying to take you down will have to go through me. Amina swallowed hard. Why risk anything for me? Because, he said softly, his eyes locking on hers with something unmistakable. You're the first person in a very long time who made me feel like I met someone extraordinary. The door handle rattled. Someone tried to open it. Elena's breath hitched. Alexander stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body. The rattling stopped. Silence followed. A silence that promised danger wasn't over. But together. They would face it, and this time, Amina would not run from who she truly was.